Hey everybody, today I'm going to make some tag backgrounds inspired by the colors of this art journal page, and I'm using distress inks. I will link up the video for the art journal page on the top right of the video screen, and today I'm going to use a brand new stamp set. This will come out tomorrow, and I'm also going to use two new stencils for these tags, which also will come out tomorrow. So keep an eye over on our shop. There is some new stuff coming, and usually we have the new products 10% off, so it's the best chance to get them. I'm going to apply the inks this time with my mini round jelly plate. I'm going to mix up a bit how I apply the ink just to see which way I like best. And it's just experimenting today. I want to play with the new stuff a little bit and with these colors because I love the art journal page or the colors I've used. I'm using Worn Lipstick and Crushed Olive in the Distress Ink version here. And I decided to apply the Worn Lipstick directly to the tag because that's a very, I would say a slightly weak color once you mix it with water. And I decided that I wanted to be a bit more intense, so I applied it directly to my background. And here I added a few more spritzes of water to the background. I try not to cover everything. I try to leave a little bit of white space because I plan to go on top with more ink. So I do not cover up everything now. And here I'm dabbing off some of the water that became too much. I really enjoy how the inks do its own thing once you mix them with water. And I also really like that the way of application gives you all kinds of different textures. I usually dry my layers in between. I use a heat tool today because I like to finish these up and don't want to wait until they dry on their own. And also you sometimes get different textures depending if you heat set your distress inks or if you let it air dry, it will turn out a bit differently because the ink has more time to react with the water when you let it dry on its own. For my next tag, I think I apply the crushed olive directly to the tag, and then I go on top with the Worn Lipstick. Okay, I do it on the last tag. I think I can't remember what I've exactly done because I did so many different techniques. But here you can see that I'm applying the Worn Lipstick with the jelly plate and water, and that's a lot weaker than the first way I did it. And I think I definitely need 2 layers here. I love this color. I think it's the most beautiful pinkish color. It's not such a bright pink. It's more of a dusky pink, and that's what I really like. And it works so well together with the crushed olive. When you mix it, you get kind of a reddish color. And it also will work with a blue. It will not make a matte. It will not mix ugly. It will make a kind of a grayish purple with the blue or with turquoisey colors, and that also works quite nicely. Here I'm also drawing the texture on the background to make sure that these, the dots I have and the pattern I have stay a little bit in place and will not move immediately once I go on top with another layer. Of course, these inks are water reactive, and when you go on top, they will not stay. The ink will always start reacting, but if it's dry, it will not mix completely. Yeah, I think that's the traditional way, I would say. I'm doing that tag background, both applied wet with the gel plate. If you don't have a gel plate, just use a piece of plastic to apply it, or just use your craft mat. Do put the inks on the craft mat and then dip your tag in. That works also very nice. Or if you only have a big jelly plate, apply the ink to the jelly plate and then also dip your tag in. And here I did that. I applied the crushed olive directly to the tag to see how this one will turn out. And now I go on top with the one lipstick. I don't add a lot of water to it because it gets so light. And I definitely need more because the green is just much more dominant than the one lipstick. Talking about our new products, we have 2 new stamp sets. Not only the one I'm using today, we also have a new craft collection, which it's been a while that we had one, and a lot of the clear versions are already sold out or almost. I think there are just a few left, and I really missed using them a little bit. And that's the reason why I have a new craft collection stamp set. And we also have 2 more stencils. So we have 2 new stamp sets and 4 new stencils. And they will be 10% off once they come out. I think until Sunday probably. And usually the newsletter subscribers get an extra discount that they can then use on their complete order. So if you are not a newsletter subscriber to our shop, I would recommend do this. We also share a weekly newsletter with all the blog posts that were over on our blog. And so you have a good collection of inspiring work to click through and to have a look at. You can see that every tag turned out different, although I used the same colors. My favorite is the left, I think, where the one lipstick is more intense. And that's the one that's almost completely dry, and that's the reason I picked this one to work over the top. Today I'm only making some tag backgrounds because otherwise the video would become way too long, and I will definitely, once I finished up these tags, there will be a blog post for them over on our blog where you can see what I've done to them. Maybe I will turn it into a video, I'm not sure. We will see that. And if you like more videos, you can join my membership. We have a bunch of videos now on there because it's almost half a year now. And there are also some bonus videos, not only the extra Saturday videos every other Saturday. There are also some other videos in between, like art supply hauls or some creative ideas I'm sharing. I now spritzed water through our mini marks stencil onto the tag. This stencil is new and it combines all our marks stencils just in a mini version because the mark stencils, I love using them, and they are also loved by our customers because the marks number 1 is already sold out, and the other 2 are also one of our best sellers, I would say. And I think these smaller patterns are always interesting to use on backgrounds. And here I do the same to the other tag. The ink will react with the water, and then you can just dab it off and it will become a bit lighter on your background, and that will create a really interesting texture. And here I'm picking up everything that was still wet on the background, and you can see that created a really lovely texture. For the next tag, I wanted to use one of the spray inks. I have the cracked Pistachio in the Oxide version, and I used it on the art journal page I use as inspiration. And I'm going to use it now with the stencil. I have a little box here because I really hate spritzing with a color spray on my desk because it sometimes goes everywhere. It's a bit tricky to place that stencil in that small box. I think I definitely need to open it on one end so I have more room, more space to put this stuff in. Yeah, but for now it's okay. I do not use a lot of sprayings because for what I said, that it's so messy and I often don't see the reason why I should use them other than spritzing them through a stencil. I'm adding a little bit of water so everything bleeds on the edges, and I'm left with some lovely textures of that stencil pattern. And I also really like how this mixes in with the colors that I had already on the tag. The distress oxides have some white pigment in them, and they will turn up lighter once they are dry, and they will always be dominant on top of distress inks because the white pigment will swim to the top. So if you have a distress oxide as your first layer and then you go on top with the distress ink, it will just come to the top and the oxide part will be dominant. Here I'm using the ink I had on the stencil, and I'm pressing it to the other tag or is it the same tag? Oh God, I can't remember. I press it to the background to create that other imprint of the stencil pattern. And I think I spritz it with a little bit of water before so the ink is more fluid and I have more that can sit on the paper. You can do the same technique, not only with the spray inks. You can just use your ink pad, ink up the stencil, then spritz it with water, and then use it as kind of a stamp to bring a pattern to the background. I used this a lot in the past, and that's also a lovely way to create an art journal background, and I did this technique in the video from last Saturday, where I made that distress ink background and where I've used these colors, and I really like the color combo. I'm now drying all the backgrounds, and then I want to add even more stuff on top, and I'm going to use our new Sketchy Leaves number 6 stencil. These kind of stencils are also very popular. We have just a few left from the Sketchy Leaves number 4 and some of the Sketchy Leaves number 5, and now we have this number 6 version with some more smaller leaves, and I want to use those, or one of them, to also use it as kind of a stamp on the background. And I plan to use it with the chipped Saphire distress ink to bring in a bit more of a darker color to increase the contrast of the tags. I placed the mask of the stencil to my slightly bigger jelly plate because there it stays in place, and I can then use the ink that is left on around the image for another background, or to put other textures to another background. And I now press that leaf to my tag to just bring in some darker texture and a darker area. I mentioned this in the last video already, that it needs to have some really dark tones and light tones to make something look interesting, and I really like how this turns out. It's a really lovely way to build up layers on a background. And I added a few spritzes with my water spray bottle so it bleeds a bit on the background. I don't want it to be a perfect image. I really like that it's just kind of a background texture. And here I use the ink and press it. I wanted to see if you can see the leaf that has kind of a negative shape now. You can see it a little bit, but it's not what I aimed for. but I just wanted to use the ink. And here you also can see that the oxide is dominant. It still shows up under the distress ink. I will add another imprint of that leaf to the tag. This time I turned it around so I have it the other way. It's not in the same direction. And I just do it exactly in the same way I've done it before. And here I'm also adding a few spritzes with water to let it bleed a bit. Not too much, because I will still want to have that leaf shape. And I will put this also a little bit onto the jelly plate to bring in a bit more of that blue color. I really love how this turned out, and I will now let that dry. And here I'm using the leftover color, also again to make the dark areas even darker. This tag definitely needs a bit more of that dark blue ink, so I'm adding another layer, and I will give you all the names of the inks in the video description so you can check them out. And there will also be links to all the products I've been using, and I will put a link into our new stamps, but they will be up tomorrow, not today, because the 15th of May is our release date, so they will be in the shop tomorrow. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter to get that extra discount, so you can save 15% on the new stamp sets in total. Now that the backgrounds are dry, I want to add a bit of background stamping with our new We'd Love stamp sets. This is inspired by our original We'd Love stamp set, which comes in a rubber version. And this is our clear version, but it has completely different images. Here I just try to stamp it with the distress ink, and I wanted to see how it works, because I was not sure if it will work with distress ink, because distress ink and stamping is a little bit tricky. But I think as it's just for a background, it's fine. I usually love the Versa Van Clear ink for stamping, but for a background image, the distress inks work quite nicely. What you also can do for a distress ink background, you can spritz the stamp with a tiny amount of water and then stamp it. That will give you a lovely watercolory effect. What I really like about these weeds is that you can combine the stamps. I have put in some tinier ones that then can be added to the bigger ones, just to make them look different a little bit. I zoomed in a little bit so you can see better what I'm doing. Well, I'm editing on my phone, so it's a very tiny screen to look at, but if you're watching maybe on TV or on a bigger device, you might see that anyway a bit better than I do. I'm picking another stamp from the set for this tag. And this also has a second stamp which is smaller, and they can be used separately, but you can also stack them up and just make the image in total bigger, and then it looks, you can create more different images with it, I would say. I would definitely use this stamp set more in the future, and maybe create also some greeting cards or whatever. It's been a while that I've made greeting cards. I just used our new cough collection and made one. I always give them to a friend of mine so she can send them to friends, because I usually do not send greeting cards, very rarely. But she's always happy when she can use my cards, and I'm happy to give them to her, and it's always a good reason to make some new greeting cards. I also like this image because you can bend the stem a bit and then it can vary how it looks. It's the same with some of the flower stamps we have, for example, on our pencil mark stamp set, where you can just bend the stem and then you can create the flowers looking into different directions, which I think is really, really nice. And this image comes in two sizes. There is another size which is a little bit smaller, so you can create some kind of a field with weeds for a background. These will also work really nice embossed in white and then used with watercolor or distress ink over the top. I think that's something I'm going to try out this afternoon maybe. I really like how this tag turned out. I have the feeling, because of that almost round spot at the top right, it looks like as if the sun is going down and you are sitting in a field of weeds. I think that's really, really lovely tag background. I truly have no idea how to finish them. I think I will not add a lot to them because I really love how these turned out so far. So maybe just a sentiment and a tiny image. But for now, I will leave them as they are. I hope you like them. I hope you enjoyed the video and you are inspired, and maybe you're going to create also some tech backgrounds today. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope we will see us next time and have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye.